What up, friends? That's what I want, and today we're going to be reviewing Cherry Bullet's newest mini-album, Cherry Dash. This is the third mini-album by K-pop girl group Cherry Bullet. To be honest, Cherry Bullet are probably one of my favorite 4th-gen K-pop groups. Despite having a fairly broad synthpop sound overall, a lot of their releases sees them doing pretty interesting combinations of aesthetics that a lot of their contemporaries just aren't really doing at the moment. They're not really chasing trends like a lot of the current 4th-gen K-pop groups in the scene are, and I thought it was pretty interesting how their last two mini-albums were largely focused on taking this sort of like American doo-wop sound and bringing it into a sort of current synthpop age. Now that's not a knock against a lot of the current 4th-gen K-pop groups, because I do like a lot of them as well, but nobody was really doing the sound that Cherry Bullet were aiming for. I mean, the closest thing was probably like the throwback pop stuff of 3rd gen, and I mean, that's pretty much all but dead at this point. This mini-album kind of moves away from that doo-wop sound a little bit, however, it's replaced by a sort of collection of sound that Cherry Bullet has experimented with throughout their few years in the industry. While this does make for a fairly inconsistent and messy listen, to be honest, I find that the individual songs are of such a good quality that I can mostly overlook this. The lead single, P.O.W, Play on the World, is going to be one of Cherry Bullet's most divisive singles for sure. It is messy as hell and all over the place, but I gotta admit, I'm kind of warming up to it. Chaeren's opener is an energetic punch to lead the song off, and I like how the introduction to the beat kind of steadily builds the instrumental as we go along here. That pre-chorus is also just fantastic. I love how emphasized that piano passage is, and it transitions into that sort of like dark techno first part of the chorus, or maybe it's even the second part of the pre-chorus, I don't know, but whatever it is, it transitions well, and I love that part too. The chorus then transforms into the more typical anthemic Cherry Bullet styled chorus, which is a bit less interesting than the pre-chorus and that sort of dark techno aesthetic they were going for a few moments prior, but it's still catchy as hell. G1's mini rap is fun, and I find that the bridge adds a sort of jagged and engaging interruption to what is otherwise a very melodic instrumental. Like I said, each part of the track almost feels like it belongs to a completely different song, but each segment is just so solid. I just can't help but dig it, especially that last chorus when those background vocals start coming in and leading the chant as well. Like, that's just so much fun. Strangely enough, it also kind of feels like a current Wiki Miki song a little bit. What's interesting about the track as well is you start to notice all these little strings that actually do form a sort of cohesive element to the song the more you listen to it. The next song, Whistle Like That, is one of the best songs on the mini-album for sure. That whistle sample is super catchy, and I love the tight drumming and guitar picking on this one. It almost makes me think of what Stacy did on their mini-album YoungLove.com. That chorus is so good, with these cheeky vocals that are backed up by an expert use of the sample once again. Catchy bass lines and vocal melodies, fun background vocals, like this is a pop song done right. It's catchy, but with a bit of a kick to it. It's also pretty rare that we get a more flirtatious song from Cherry Bullet, especially in the lyrics on this one, but I am a fan of it, and I like how they did it, feeling very energized and assertive compared to other songs of this type. Cloud 9 is a pretty endearing track as well, feeling like it came off of Broadway or something. Those booming beats and brass samples create a very maximalist sound that their vocals fit into nicely. In a way, it actually kind of feels like a natural evolution of that sort of doo-wop sound that I was mentioning previously. The piano is really playful, and each part of the track seamlessly flows into each other with no loss in continuity. And that seamlessness is something that I appreciate about this song, and a lot of Cherry Bullet songs as well, because I find that in certain sects of K-pop, you have these tracks that are relatively, standard and normal, it's all well and good, but then, like, one element about it, typically like the pre-chorus or something like that, it just goes totally off the rails and sounds nothing like what the song was doing previously, so I'm glad that this song was very consistent in that regard. Granted, it can work to make different elements of the track totally different from each other if that's what the song is all about, like in P.O.W in this mini-album, or something like Zimzalabim by Red Velvet, or Sticker by NCT even, but unless you're making that the whole song's identity, it sounds kind of awkward when you, like, the pre-chorus is just like this EDM style track when the or the verses are synthpop or something, so I'm glad that this song was consistent in that regard. It's just a fun little theatric bop. Queen is another similar sounding bop with those throwback piano chords, upbeat bass and drums, and very bouncy flows from the girls here. I also love that wavy throwback synth that you can occasionally hear in the background here. It's not there too often, but it does add some nice texture when it does show up. Hearing Remy get some lines is always nice, and I think the girls' vocals mesh really well with each other here. They all kind of come together to create this very on-top-of-the-world, jovial feeling. This one and the previous track actually do remind me of some of that throwback stuff that early Mamamoo was doing, or even groups like Ladies Code was doing, so that sound is always nice to see come back. I'm really digging Chaeren's sassy verses, and Bora's bridge is just fantastic and elegant. It really showcases why she's kind of the vocal backbone of Cherry Bullet. Each member really lets their personalities show here, and it's just a really lush and feel-good song overall. If there was any weak song on the project, I guess it would have to be A Winter Star. It's not even bad, really, and as far as like Korean ballads go, I do think this is one of the better ones for sure, but instrumentally, it's just kind of an anti-climax coming off the more energetic and upbeat songs that the entire rest of the mini-album was composed of. It's definitely the safest song on the mini, so ending with it was kind of unfortunate. However, the vocals on this track are fantastic. It's probably one of the best vocal showcases of Cherry Bullet in their catalog. The pace and instrumental also pick up a bit during the chorus, as well as the beat and piano passages get a bit more lively as the vocals swell. The lyrics are also kind of your typical somber love breakup sort of song, but I do like the contrast in the cool and warm imagery here, and it's at least sung with a lot of heart. As you can see, I loved almost everything here individually. My biggest gripe though is how these songs basically had little to nothing to do with each other. I guess that is less important for a mini album or an EP as opposed to a full-length album, but a bit more consistency would have been nice. It's kind of how I feel about Gorillaz' Song Machine Season 1, where each individual track was very solid, but there was just like nothing to really connect them, but because the quality of the tracks was so solid, I could kind of overlook that. This mini-album basically feels like Cherry Bullet in review, a brief snapshot of pretty much all of the sounds that they've tried so far throughout their careers. That being said though, I do think this is probably Cherry Bullet's most solid album overall. Some may not like that they're kind of totally off doing their own thing, they're not really chasing the trends that are in 4th gen currently, especially like the Y2K stuff and things like that. But in a way, I also think it's kind of good because then they're not competing with huge groups like New Jeans or even XG or something like that. So having Cherry Bullet do their own thing can be kind of a catch-22, kind of a double-edged sword a little bit, but I'm glad that they're kind of sticking to their own identity here. For me, this mini-album showcases what K-pop is kind of all about. It's messy, it's chaotic, it's energetic, but most importantly, it's fun. I am feeling a light 8 on Cherry Bullet's newest mini-album, maybe even a decent 8 on a good day. But of course, we do have to talk about album covers on this show, and you know, if you know me, you know that I'm not the hugest fan of the sort of group shot with just text on it. I typically like more design-oriented covers, like especially with groups with a lot of members. They can get a little messy sometimes. However, I do think this one is probably one of the better examples of these styles of covers because it looks more like a magazine cover in the way it's structured. You know, it kind of has like that Vogue vibe to it a little bit, especially with how massive the text is on this cover. I feel like it's definitely more typography driven, more design heavy, if you will. That font that they chose was very good. I like the sort of warm orangey background colors as opposed to like the red text as well. I think the whole composition here was actually pretty well done for this style of cover, so good job on that. But of course, those are just my thoughts on this newest mini-album by Cherry Bullet. What did you guys think? Do you agree with me in that it was a messy mini-album for sure, but it was a lot of fun and kind of just showcases a lot of Cherry Bullet's charms? Or were you hoping for something a little more consistent or maybe even in line with what current 4th gen groups are doing, like the Y2K stuff? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell if you too want to run away, and until the next one, farewell.